Hey there. So in today's video, I'm going to answer one of your questions, and that is how I set up my Leica SL2 for hybrid shooting. So stick around. Hey, so welcome to today's episode. My name is Victor Quintana, and I will be sharing my settings for hybrid shooting on the Leica SL2. This question came to me by a fellow photographer, and I just wanted to give him a quick little shout out. Make sure to check out their page and give them a follow. And let's dive right into it. I'm going to actually take you guys within the menu, and we can kind of dive in and go over the quick menu settings that I have already set that I can switch from photo to video extremely fast without any hesitation. The only thing I would say besides the settings in the menu that you'll need is an ND filter for the videos. Other than that, you can quickly shoot photo to video and be good to go. So let's dive in. Alright, so let's jump right into it. Here on the back, I don't have a lens on, so that's why you're just seeing black, but I'm going to show you how I have set up my quick menu for easy hybrid shooting. So first of all, if you don't know already, the menu is touchscreen between photo and video settings, and once you set your video settings or your photo settings, they all stay exactly the same. Like, it doesn't affect when you switch between photo and video, which I think is pretty cool. I also have this button up here customized to switch between the two of them, just because, you know, when I'm out and about, I'm just switching. I know my settings are going to stay the same, so it's a quick switch from photo to video, which I think is really nice, rather than having to go menu and then click. That's basically two buttons, whereas if I'm on photo, I just click here and I'm on video and then back to photo. So I always like having that customized button. But now getting back to the quick menu. So the first thing I wanted to quickly go over is my drive mode. I keep that on single. I don't really shoot anything that needs super fast shooting. So, you know, for the most part, I'm shooting models or products. So I'm not ever really shooting any like fast moving cars or anything like that. So typically I keep this in single. The next thing I wanted to talk about is a focus mode. For me, what I have found has worked best is autofocus continuous. Then for my autofocus mode, I always usually choose to have field or spot for photos. We'll get into video afterwards, but for photos, I usually keep it in field or spot. Then for the autofocus profiles, I always choose children, pets, and then one thing I do like to do is that I add 1 point of responsiveness with shift and direction. The next thing is metering modes. Now typically I have it on multi-field, but with the new firmware update came the highlight weighted field. I have not really put it through the ringer yet or tested that out myself, but I'm hoping to in the next coming weeks. And that's hopefully what I'm going to be using moving forward, because I really like being able to save my highlights, because with the amount of pixels and information from dynamic range that this camera has, you can always bring back the shadows, and I feel like the shadows always seem a little nicer when you're recovering them than the highlights do. That's just been my experience, so I'm really interested to try out this highlight weighted metering mode, so stay tuned for a video about that. Then the next thing is white balance for photos. Typically I end up just shooting automatic white balance. It's really easy to correct that in post, and I can batch edit them from there. So for the most part, I usually just leave that in auto. And then the last thing here is the file format. So DNG is like the raw file for Leica, and I always like to keep that in the quick menu so I can see that I am shooting in DNG, because I've had photographer friends that have gotten to situations where they didn't check that and end up shooting an entire job on JPEG and can barely do any edits to the photo, and it really was just like a wash. So I always like to check that as well. And actually, one other thing that I'll mention is I have my format card option here, just so it's easy to get to when I put in new cards right before a job or anything like that, because if not, you have to go and dive into the actual menu, and I believe that is on the last page, second to last page, page 5, format card. So I actually really like to have it in the quick menu. It's just quick and easy. Now let's switch over to video. Now for video, you'll see the first thing over here, we have the focus mode, and again, autofocus continuous has just worked the best for me. I have tried intelligent autofocus, and it kind of just hunts a little bit too much for me, even with the new update. So I've just found that autofocus continuous has worked the best in order to capture autofocus on the Leica SL2. Then the next option we have is the autofocus mode. Now for video, I typically like to put it in zone. I have tried the tracking and I actually tried the eye, face, and body detection at Miami Swim Week recently, and honestly it was a no-go. So I ended up putting it back on zone with autofocus continuous, and that literally gave me the best results out of the entire week of filming. So I've been sticking with that for the most part. Next, we have the metering mode. Again, as I mentioned before, I have not tried the highlight weighted metering mode yet. I hope to put that to test in the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned for a video on that. But before the highlight weighted, I would just use multi-field. Next, we have white balance. Now for video, I always try to take with me a gray card. It's a very small piece of equipment and doesn't really take up much space in any sort of bag that I'm carrying that day. And in video, it's a lot easier to set your white balance in camera correctly rather than having to worry about it in post. It just makes life a whole lot easier in my opinion. So I always like to carry my little gray card, and then I'll set my white balance according to the scene that I'm filming. The next is kind of like the DNG file format situation. You have two options. You have MP4 and MOV, but typically I always shoot in MOV. I don't think I've ever shot MP4 files, but I just like being able to see that I am on MOV mode there. So I like to keep that in my quick menu. Then the next thing is the video format and resolution. I typically shoot at 4K 60, but then I can quickly come in here, go to the right here, and then drop down to 4K at 24 frames per second. And that's usually my go-to as far as what I'm shooting is between 24 frames or 60 frames per second at 4K. And then the rest of these quick menus down here I don't really use because typically for audio I'm recording to a recorder anyway, so I'm putting the settings on there. This is for an audio jack. I never really use headphones on camera. This is the default profile. I have my own profile and that's why it's set up this way. And then you can see next is to lock your screen, and then the last one is just to connect to like a Photos app, which to be honest I rarely do anyways. So that's kind of just my quick hybrid menu setup. And like I said, you could easily go from photo to video and keep all the settings exactly the same. The only thing that I would say you'll need to do is to keep an ND filter on you at all times, because if you want to shoot video at least during the day, you're going to want to have that ND filter. Well, I hope you got something out of this video, and hopefully it helps you in deciding on which settings would work best for you when you're out on the field or on location shooting. And if you have any other questions regarding the Leica SL2, SL2-S, or any other Leica gear, please leave it down in the comments below, or feel free to shoot me a DM on Instagram. I am working on creating videos and answering any questions I possibly can. So until next time, my name is Victor.